Hey there. Wanted to let you know about some other stuff on the Duckfeed network that you may enjoy, like a show called Monster and My Podcast. It's me and Gary going through the monstrous manual from D&D 2nd edition and talking about each of the monsters. It is a funny, short show that comes out 3 times a week at Duckfeed.tv/Monster and My Podcast. Also, check out hexcrank.com if you like survival horror games and spooky things in general. It's got articles, videos, streams, all that good stuff. And all of this is supported by our nice friends at patreon.com/duckfeedtv. Thanks.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to Bonfireside Chat. It is a profane favorite.
Yes, and this week we are reading your responses to Farron's Keep. We let Austin go, but again, Austin Walker, who was the guest on the main episode for Farron's Keep, we really appreciate him taking the time, and boy, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. Like he is a great dude. So by the time this comes out, you can probably check out his work at vice.com/gaming. We think that's the URL. Time will tell.
We went back and forth a couple times on that.
Yeah. Who knows? What a twist. But I'm sure if you just search Austin Walker Vice, you will find the thing and not his habit for smoking and drinking.
Yep.
Which is usually what comes up when you search Austin Walker's Vice. He is such a nice guy. I even feel bad about that joke. I don't know whether he does any of those things. He's just like a sweet dude. And it's just like, I don't mean it. But it's just Vice means something before it meant like, weirdly good investigative journalism.
Yeah, like hard-hitting exposés, but not in the sarcastic,
And then weird sex trash. It's like it's both things. Like I'm sure I've told this story before, but real quick, I had a buddy who moved to New York with his girlfriend at the time, and it was just like they were real, like he was real in love and everything. And then she's like, yeah, come to move to New York with me. They moved out there. She and I'm not demonizing her, like this relationships are complicated, but she broke up with him very early on after he moved out there. So he was pretty crushed. Mm-hmm. And then Vice had a thing where they did interviews, and the thing was like interviews with 2 people who just had sex. And she was in the magazine for that, like really quickly after they broke up.
Oh,
so not only did he have to, he got broke up with after moving to like the scariest city in the world, and I imagine it being a lot big, but then he had to read this magazine article that was just like, here's an interview with your ex right after she had sex with somebody else. It is comically kicking you while you're down. But hopefully Austin will clean up the joint. I don't want to see any more of that shit on his watch. So I'll start us off here with a little bit of follow-up from Zach. Zach says, after listening to your last episode, I noticed that you didn't mention an interesting interaction you can have with Rosaria. If you kill her and then reload the Rosaria's chamber area, she'll come back to life, and the cribs in the room hanging from the ceiling will be bobbing up and down, almost like they are agitated at best or convulsing at worst. You have to kill yourself to trigger the event, and I'm not sure if it messes up Ringfinger Leonhard's quest or not, so proceed with caution. It is incredibly unsettling to watch. I don't know if it has any lore significance or if it's simply there to be spoopy, but it is effective either way. I had no idea.
I immediately want to go do this because that sounds great.
Yeah, I'm so hesitant to kill NPCs in these games, even though I know that the consequence, I'm going to play through them again.
Yeah.
I'll be able to see what happens, but I never just kill NPCs until it's at the very end. That's cool. I'm going to have to do that.
Yeah. So I included this because I didn't know that. I knew that there was a little bit of a death and rebirth thing with Rosaria, not just with her subjects, but with her. There was a way you could get her back. I couldn't remember if we addressed it in the episode or not.
We're going to talk about it when we talk about Leonhard.
Shit. Yeah, there we go.
Yes. So it's we just haven't gotten to the area where he is, and we couldn't find a way to talk about it without spoiling it, since that area is such a spoiler. So we'll get to that soon enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. Thank you for writing in with that, Zach. Moving on to the responses about the actual area. Patrick writes in, saying, Farron Keep was the most immersive area in the game for me. It would have been my favorite except for a later area in the game, the one with that skyline. What I loved about the swamp was its atmosphere, both from a gameplay and mood setting point of view. The cutscene that plays after you extinguish the first fire really set the tone, and I felt a figurative chill run down my spine as the camera panned over a foreboding mansion-like building after telling me that I need to find 2 more flames. After that, I was struck by a familiar feeling, one that I had felt way back in Blighttown, the depths, and the Forbidden Woods. It's that moment when you realize that you've gotten pretty far, and there's this sensation of hope that says, oh my god, I might actually ace a Dark Souls area. Of course, I died to an Elder Grew before getting the last flame, and my spirits were crushed, but I loved it. Before I died, I was really stressing out on managing my purple moss, keeping an eye out for enemies, and trying to memorize the layout. These are the best moments of the Soul series that the Soul series has to offer, rather. High tension dread that is rewarding the better that you play, and soul crushing when you fail. That's the mark of a truly immersive gaming experience.
Yeah.
How bad would it be if you had to extinguish all those flames on the same life?
Oh, that would be very frustrating.
Yeah.
And eventually you'd get it, I think.
Oh yeah.
Because that's what I do now. Like when I run through on my current like don't give a shit character that doesn't have to get everything because I've gotten it before.
You don't get injured because you're loose.
Yeah. But if you had to do that the first time, I could see that being very frustrating. But yeah, this area does a good job of that.
Mm-hmm.
So Brian says via contact. I had a thought while helping one of my regular Souls bros through the Farron Wood last night. The Golden Scroll and the antiquated set seem to tell a story of adventure and risk taking gone awry. Like the Basilisk Curse Frogs nabbed some poor bastard from behind who thought he stumbled upon a fortune in the Golden Scroll. That's why the chest is open and the item is on the ground. They didn't even have time to pocket it before the curse took hold. Poor little Estes on the curb for that fallen adventurer. Yeah.
So something that like I'm a little bit bummed about, and you didn't really see this in Dark Souls 2, but the fact that we're like they no longer put statues where basilisks once were or are like around that. Like I want basilisk gardens. Give it to me, please.
Yeah. I want that quite a bit. And that was such a good detail.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's such a like I told this story in the PvP episode, but like the guy with the hacked sword that cursed you, and me seeing him kill Solaire and getting the Solaire statue when I was in Anor Londo in Dark Souls 1, and then running off a cliff so I wouldn't get cursed and hacked. Like it's a really memorable moment that only happened because of those statues.
Right.
That statue is such a good asynchronous. Like that might be my favorite bit of like non-core asynchronous detail. Like way cooler than hearing the bells.
Oh yeah.
Like I think that's so cool, so foreboding when you just saw those statues. There's really no reason for them to take that out.
It's just, with technical overhead, implementation. Like I have no idea. The change in the netcode too probably messed that up.
Yeah, it's got to be the same thing they use for soapstone messages though, which are still like every other thing is still there. So it's hard for me to believe that just the statues are the hard thing.
Yeah.
When everything else still works perfectly.
Yeah, I always assume things are way harder than I assume.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I wish that it would have been worth it. I feel like if it was possible.
Oh yeah.
I would have liked to have seen that effort put there because it is really, really cool, and I do miss it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Doug writes via contact saying, I had really mixed feelings on this location. The lower portion felt like everything I disliked about the swamp and the Road of Sacrifices, except with more darkness, more slow trudging, and poison buildup virtually everywhere. I get that the purpose of this is to create a level of island hopping, but it felt more like a chore to get from place to place than a fun gameplay experience. On the other hand, the feeling of exploration upon climbing to the high tower, finding the dead wolf, and facing down the rock demon atop the bridge was transformative. It may be the single most vertical level I can think of in the series. Suddenly, I went from slogging through the thigh-deep toxic muck to having a view of virtually every other area in the game. It wasn't enough to salvage the level for me, but it was at least the kind of surprise set piece that reminded me that no one designs levels quite like From.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I guess I didn't. It might be like a very high point. I still don't think of this as a vertical level.
Yeah,
like you have that one little tower.
It's still really spread out. I put this in here because I wanted to think about that. Like it's technically true, right? You are climbing up, but just like when I think of a vertical level, I think of something that's stacked on itself. Like that transition of taking that ladder and that elevator makes it feel like two separate portions to me. And I wanted to see if this would ring true for you.
Yeah. I don't think of it that way. I mean, I guess it is. You do get to go up. It is like the crow's nest, right?
Yeah.
Of like one of the better crow's nests of the game, where it's like you get to go up and look down on what you were just at.
Yeah, and it's real cool to like as you're climbing up. Like I think even on the ladder itself, you rise above the smog line almost, and like you realize, oh, like this isn't like when you go into dark route and all of a sudden it's just night now. Like no, this is like this is something about the atmosphere of this place as opposed
like LAX.
to
like it's like the human swamp that is LA. When I was back in Illinois, one of my friends called if you're riding with adults, and someone has to sit in the back seat, he called it adult scum jail. It's like you get shotgun, you get adult scum jail.
It's like, pretty intense.
Very funny. I think it's very funny. I don't think the old wolf is dead. I hear you can still like. I mean, it is still, but I just like that's such a comfortable pose. I thought of the wolf is sleeping.
Yeah.
Weird trivia: early on in an early version of the game, there was a bug that made the wolf non-responsive once you killed the Abyss Watchers, which made people think that the wolf died after you killed the Abyss Watchers, which was kind of cool. Like you get to do this like little covenant, but only as long as you've made it this far in the game.
Yeah, I like that.
And that makes tons of sense because there's an exact copy of this covenant for another area in the game later that's mechanically identical, but that's not the case. It was just a bug. So
I like the idea.
Interesting.
I like a temporary covenant.
Yeah, me too. They haven't not done anything with that. That's a cool idea. James says, by contact. So I feel like I solved the poison issue in a unique way. Note, not fun. Not a fun way. In the way Dark Souls 3 makes it really easy to jump back to your preferred Dark Souls 1 playstyle, I ended up relying on a strength faith build. I got really lucky and had a chime drop for me, and its weapon art of overtime regeneration became a great trade-off when I would run out of Estus, forcing me to run without a shield. So I ended up slowly walking through the swamp with my chime out, healing slightly faster than I was hurt. It felt like a bizarro version of the Tomb of the Giants, except I could see perfectly fine. I ended up not being able to find the fires, or what to do with them, for a long time, but I kind of feel clever for finding my own way of dealing with the poison swamp. I recommend people not try it. It's a reminder, again, that's like a Demon Souls thing, because you get out the Adjudicator shield.
Yeah.
And you can and the ring, and you could out regen the poison. That was that's like a old tactic. It's like 1990 or 2008 pro strat.
Yeah. So you did that thing where you lose 10 years. I also lose 10 years, like immediately. Like if it was a sufficient enough time ago, it was in the 90s.
Oh yeah.
No, just I like this, and it reminds me that I need to pay more attention to weapon arts. That is a piece of the game that I just haven't gotten to yet. Not because it's bad, but just because it's like not apparent. It's
not as good. Like every time I get a weapon, I play with the weapon art and try it. They're not as cool as I thought they would be, while still being all right.
Yeah.
Like there's a bunch of them. I think they need a lot of them need buffs. Like a lot of the strength ones give you this little like damage buff that lasts for like literally 2.5 seconds or something.
Yeah.
It's really slight and just not worth the time doing it.
It's like it's setting up a combo in a game that really is not about combos.
Yeah, exactly. Like again, for my purposes, PvE, you don't have to do it.
Oh yeah.
Sure. The chimes and talismans do two things. Like sometimes they regenerate you. The other thing they do is they give you a couple seconds of poise, like old Dark Souls 1 style poise. But again, that requires a level of foresight. Like it doesn't last long enough to make it worth it.
Yeah, like it is. It is so like tactically granular that like I just look over it.
Yes.
Yeah. I like the phrase slowly walking through the swamp with my chime out. That sounds like a very proper way of like saying ding dong. Like, oh, it's my chime.
Yeah, you ring your bell. That's how you do it.
Thomas writes, let's see here. So this area is one of my favorites, but also where my love for the callbacks began to wear very thin. The Dark Wraiths and the Black Knight, but you already covered that, are the big negatives here. I hadn't found the first one in the prison cell in the High Wall of Lothric, so the first ones I came across were the pair walking up the hill. My first thought was, why are they here? Thinking something big was about to happen. So I began stalking them up the hill. Then they go charging off to get instantly murdered. So they're just a callback. That sucks. In Dark Souls 1, these guys instilled fear in me, lurking in the dark, hunting me to steal my humanity. So dangerous, they had to be buried underwater. And now they get locked in cages and get beaten up by guys with sticks. I felt this was one of the moments, like many others, that felt lazy and like fan service, which I think is the biggest downfall of the game. For all of the shade that is thrown at Dark Souls 2, I think it did the callbacks a lot better.
Yeah, I agree with you in general, but I think that these guys are actually okay.
Yeah.
Like, because I think the reason that they're here, I could see if they just died for me, but for some reason they always seem to outlive the Grus.
Yep.
For me, they end up stronger, and like it makes sense. I guess like your point being that they're like they're here because they are pro Abyss, and the Abyss Watchers are anti Abyss.
Yeah, never.
There's
Abyss.
not much more than that, so there's that one level of why they're here.
Mm-hmm.
There aren't two. There isn't like a complicated story, which I would have liked to have seen something a little bit more, a little bit more complex.
Yeah.
And with that I agree with you. But as far as Dark Souls 3 callbacks go, it doesn't feel that egregious because at least there's that surface level. I think that maybe speaks more to my desperation for explanation more than anything, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, there's definitely a need for closure in that, especially because like they're explicitly saying in the gear that they are servants of Kath, and like, it's not explicit.
So why? And it's not like we associate Kath with Londor. It's not like Londor doesn't already have a agenda,
right?
And the way this fits into it, other than that very simple, like you can be pro-Abyss or anti-Abyss, is just not very complicated.
Right.
There's not a lot of nuance there, which is part of the reason why that is a way that I would think that, I'd be with you on this one, Thomas. But it didn't feel nearly as bad as like a lot of things.
Yeah.
The general, like I didn't mind the callbacks as much in this area as some other areas because a lot of them were architectural and stuff. I still didn't have like a strong emotional reaction to it though.
Yeah.
I wasn't like, oh man, I can't believe this is Elysium. Like I love Elysium. I didn't have that. The times where it actually worked, we talked about it with Austin, where it was like just that creeping feeling of familiarity.
Yeah.
Even just seeing the mushroom people wasn't like, oh my God, the mushroom people.
Like so much of it is so subtle that I missed a lot of it the first time around. You know, like that, I think speaks to its credit. Like I'm not going to hold that against the game that I missed it.
Yeah, not specifically here. Like here, it's all pretty direct. Like you go up to the Taurus Demon Bridge, you see the mushroom people. It's all very direct. Other places, it more just feels like areas like are quoting level design, which is the kind of the part I like. But it doesn't. This doesn't feel like the reason why the callbacks here don't feel as bad as some of the other ones is because this used to be this place. Yeah, like that is an answer. It's not particularly emotionally resonant or satisfying to me. But it's a thing. It's like it doesn't feel arbitrary because there is end part of that equation.
It hits it hits a like an intellectual note for that. Like, oh, okay, cool. Like I can connect these dots, and I think that I'm more acclimated to like accept it because they build to it. Yeah, like it's not like like Sif comes up and says, "Oh no, there's a problem. The castle sank." Musa should have told you.
Yeah. Like the idea of the Sif and as a goofy figure. Lachlan, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Lachlan, I think.
Lachlan, I apologize if I mispronounced that. Says via contact. I initially hated Farron's Keep. I thought it was the most irritating of the series' poison swamp levels, and I found the whole extinguish the flames to proceed mechanic disappointingly gamey. I complained to people that it felt like it was lifted from Zelda, but when I extinguished the last flame, I noticed the bas-relief above the altar was an image of the four kings. That made me curious. I went back to the other two again and discovered that they were clearly supposed to be representations of Nito and the Bed of Chaos with the Witch of Izalith. I was totally delighted. There's an in-game justification for the Zelda-style gaminess. The Abyss Watchers require new applicants to symbolically complete the journey of the chosen undead by extinguishing the flames of Dark Souls 1 bosses and opening a huge door. There are a lot of things about the callbacks in Dark Souls 3 that bother me, and someone in Duckfeed Slack said, I'm the most anti-Dark Souls 3 person there.
Outside of Gary.
Outside of me, of course. When you come at the king, that's not this. But this is an example of a callback done so right. Are the Abyss Watchers confusing Artorias with its chosen undead? Who knows? But it's weird and ambiguous and suggestive, which are the things that got me invested in Dark Souls lore in the first place. I wish Farron had focused more on the relatively subtle callbacks like this, rather than dressing up new NPCs and our old friends' costumes. Yeah, we more or less covered this in the main episode.
Yep.
I think that this would have been a cool detail if they weren't like. There's just nothing to suggest that that's the case. Like,
yeah,
I don't want to steal anyone's headcanon.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cool idea that they, in order to do that, but all it would have taken was a line.
Yep.
We have one NPC that constantly talks about the watchdogs. Just have him be like, you have to make that hoary old recreation of the chosen undead or something like that.
Yeah, like I mean,
Done.
Hawkwood seems like he would be, like just he quit it, so he would be just like really dismissive of the custom, right?
Yeah.
Like
Perfect.
he would say it like. It's it just like, so I desperately want to believe what Lachlan is saying, right? Like it's like, oh, like that would be cool, and that would like it wouldn't affect too much else. I don't think like that wouldn't have an awful lot of ripples,
far-reaching implications.
Yeah, the problem is that it just kind of like peters out at the 90-yard line.
Yes.
And like they like just if it had that one little push, I'm not, I worry when we say like, oh, if it was more explicit, if they had squared the circle, like any of those things, I worry that we're coming across like, hey, from chew my steak for me. I just, I'm conditioned to not want to make huge leaps without saying like, oh, this is headcanon or this is, like just calling it a leap. Like I would like it to be, again, closure, right? I would like it to be, not pat, but at least defensible, right?
I think about that all the time, and at the risk of turning this into like just a repeat of the last like appendix episode, like I think the difference there is not with us. I feel like it's with the game, where like the level of granular detail with those little things that do like a lot of the work but don't actually connect the dots are stronger in this. Like
stronger in this area or stronger
in Dark Souls 3. Like there are more of them that are this kind of thing where it's like, oh, this would be it except for one line, like it lays it out, us a little story except for one line. And the problem is one, which you weren't calling this out as a problem, but it kind of is a problem, is that it doesn't add up to anything.
Right.
Like it doesn't, even if this is true, so what? It doesn't like add to anything that doesn't resonate with what we already know about the Abyss Watchers.
You don't buy any, like you don't get anything from cashing in on this stuff.
Exactly.
Like,
and that's why, and there's a lot of those little things, a lot of these little like 80% of a story, 70% of a little storyline that if you do the work, like I was willing to make those leaps of faith in the earlier games because it felt like it added up to something. Like, oh, this is a really cool idea. What does this do though?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't play into anything. It doesn't feel thematically resonant other than just kind of this idea that like the past is the past and has moved into legend. Yeah. But they're already that. Like that's what these guys are, is like them worshiping this legend and kind of like stealing this this fighting style and stuff. Yeah.
And like I know that we're doing that thing where we say, I don't want a blank, and then we do blank, and then we're intellectually disingenuous or whatever. But like it's totally a thing. It's totally the experience of this. And like we have to be honest when we see it, because like there is that gap, and like the other side of that blade cuts if we just like say this, we're being dishonest with ourselves. And like there's going to be another, it's like there's another side that like swings back and says like, well, no, there's actually nothing to base that off of, and it goes against the way we've run the show the entire way.
Exactly. Like it's not like, what is easier to believe, that there's this grand conspiracy that like overnight me and Cole just decided to be assholes who don't think about things the same way, or miraculously when we started covering this new game that is made in a different time frame and stuff, we're having a different reaction to it. Like what's new here? It's not us. Like we're the same people. So like before you like pop off onto the internet to like call us assholes for doing that, like it's just so like when we say like oh, we're not going to do this and then we do it. Yeah. Instead of being like, oh, you guys are hypocrites, maybe recognize that as we're struggling because we're conflicted. Yeah. Like that's a very like human thing that comes from dedicating your, a large portion of your life to the series and finding parts of it disappointing. It's not like, oh, we're calculating in a way to be like dishonest and shitty.
Yeah, I mean, we're not trying to, like, this isn't the audio version of clickbait. First off, nobody listens to podcasts. Second off, this is, you know, a half hour into a supplementary episode for a thing, and usually this stuff is
7th episode of the thing. Like, if we were doing this opinion to be controversial, we're bad at that. Like, that would be us being shitty at that. And that is not not the case. It is just this is the thing that's different, and it doesn't mean you have to agree. Like, it doesn't mean that you have to agree with me or us about this. It just means that it's genuine. And that's the most frustrating thing about, like, any of the negative feedback that we've gotten about this.
Like this season, we've segued into addressing, you know, some very specific iTunes reviews, but, like, I don't want to be in a position where people like us only because we like the same thing they like. Yeah. I don't want to have that gun held up to my head. And I don't want to have somebody exercising that kind of editorial control over us of what we should or shouldn't be saying.
Yeah, I don't owe anybody that. You know, we don't owe anybody that. Like, it's not that's not a responsibility on our parts, you know. And it's frustrating when it's condescending to come at us with that kind of response, with the assumption that we're faking it or that we're betraying you.
And so, you know, what I view my responsibility to be is to be, you know, as thorough as possible, do my due diligence to show up and be honest with you, Gary. And if I'm honest with you, I'm being honest with anybody who's listening in. Yes. Like that is what I'm here to do.
Yes.
Right.
I too am here to do the same thing. So it doesn't really answer the question or anything. It is just, I don't know. Yep. It's a thing. We don't have to, this won't come up every single, I mean, it might, because there's going to be examples of this stuff too.
Oh yeah, like, no, true.
This one, you can't talk about Dark Souls 3 without talking about callbacks. Like, it is impossible to do so.
You can't. And, you know, like, just, we can't do that thing. Like, okay, so, like, we've mentioned it 5 times, therefore we can only say good things about it from now on because we know you don't like it. It's like, no, we're building the case. Right.
Well, we're building the case, and it's part of the individual areas. Right. Like, our approach is not a holistic approach about just Dark Souls. It is about these individual areas. And these callbacks, as will become apparent, work and don't work at a granular level.
Right.
You know, it is not a holistic thing. I've said it before, but the people who are just like, oh, you know, I don't want to listen to the season because it's too negative. Like, I'm coming up on a lot of real cool areas that are pretty great.
Yep.
You know, we're going to say some really, you know, glowing things about it. It's not that those aren't the beginning areas. You know, we're not a review show.
No.
Like, it is a travel guide to Lothric.
we hit the granular thing, and then, like, we check in and see, like, how does this affect what we know so far? How does
this add or subtract to the greater whole?
Yeah.
You know, what is this doing to the avalanche that is the whole game?
Yeah, I mean, it's an accounting. Like, and, you know, you can call that workmanlike, you can call it tedious, like, whatever you want to call it, but, like, it is what we've done for 3 years. For 3.5 years.
Yeah, and our approach has not changed. This is what our approach that we've had since the beginning looks like, and when applied to X.
Yeah.
You know?
And for anybody who's listening, saying, like, hey, why are you guys addressing this? Why are you thinking, like, you know, like, we like you, we're listening. Like, it comes up, and it is actually, like, far more, like, just open than it has been in the past. Like, Dark Souls 2 season, that was, you know, just a toilet a lot of the time because it coincided with a bunch of other ugly stuff, but, like, it's showing up in, like, iTunes reviews and things. And so I want to make sure we get to say our piece. We get to say our piece all the time. Like, that's why we have the show, and that's what the show is. But, like, it should be addressed because I want you to know, like, we're here with you, you know, like, we we're playing the same game that you are. And I want you to know that we're addressing this with the best faith possible.
It is frustrating to not respond and just kind of, like, turn the other cheek when you're being charged with disingenuity. I don't know what the word would be, but yeah, you know, the thing that anybody wants, and I've said this 1,000 times, I think is true, is, like, what you want is to be understood. And that's why it's so hard to just be like, I'm just not going to engage this person telling me I'm being dishonest, because I understand me. That's the human condition, is just, like, shouting to the sky, understand me. Yeah. You know, and that's what we're doing. So it does get frustrating. We recognize also that the reason why it's bubbling up more is because more people are listening to the show. Oh yeah, which is awesome. Yeah, you know, it is just you know, we want to put that in there vis-a-vis these kind of, like, these callbacks, because it is a thing that it's not us being dishonest. No, you know.
please. Dislike our personality? Don't listen if we make you angry.
Well, that's good.
Like any of that. Dislike our verbal tics or whatever. But like, man, I don't know. I take this super seriously, and I'm genuinely not a person who thinks that taking things seriously is a good thing. Like, like just pick the things that you want to invest yourself in. And and it's like, if we're fucking this up, it's not intentionally, and we're not doing it to make you angry.
No, it's not clickbait. It's nothing like that.
Yeah.
Anywho, what did John say?
John said via contact, I thought that Farron Keep was a great example of Dark Souls 1 references incorporated into Dark Souls 3 in a great way. I'll start off.
Let me tell you why you're done.
Let me.
Hold on.
We
you
agree
got 10
with
minutes?
you.
I'm just kidding.
Oh, man. And I'll start off by saying that my first playthrough is definitely great. Another poison swamp. And even better, more slimes with crazy physical resistance. I think referring to the leeches there. But the area quickly won me over. The ritual that you perform to open the door to the Abyss Watchers has some lore significance that is easy to miss. The carvings behind each fire seem to bear a resemblance to the bosses from the original game, namely the Four Kings and Nito and the Witch of Izalith. Above the Watchdogs covenant, you find a wandering demon, but this one isn't like the others. It's old and spews boulders and dust. It's lost its connection to the fire that it was born from. When you hit it from behind too much, its legs buckle. This thing isn't even an actual boss fight. No fog gate, no big health bar. It is just a destitute relic from an old world that has no place. Finally, there are the Ulasil references. We find Dusk's gear by a white birch tree, a poor dead mushroom fellow, near one of the, and a poor dead mushroom fellow. Near one patch of dead mushrooms, you find a scroll, and near a single standing mushroom, which looks an awful lot like Elizabeth, you find another. This reeks of Ulasil Township, but not in a direct way. Note, if this area is Ulasil, and that's the theory that we're working with, I'm okay with it. That means in Dark Souls 1, we saw Ulasil proper as was in decline. Then we saw the Darkroot Basin where Ulasil was consumed by the Abyss and was taken back by nature. Now we see Ulasil slowly poking back up and being made use of by the inhabitants of a new world. I'm fine with Ulasil being here because it's already unstuck in time, right? Like we only saw it in its heyday by kind of going back to it there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why this that response unlocked this for me, but it is a little bit weird that I guess there's nothing in this area that is Elysial specific that isn't in Darkroot.
Oh yeah,
because I was just thinking why would something be just in Elysial, skip a Darkroot, and end up here, which is kind of the way that it's described, but it's really not that way. I mean, everything here, those mushrooms, dusk, all those things were Darkroot related.
The thing that it sacrifices though is that wonderful item description from Dark Souls 2 that says Elizabeth was a beautiful princess.
That was really good. Said to be, that was a good use of that history thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, these callbacks don't bother me again, but at the risk of repeating myself, because it intellectually is a complete equation. I didn't have a real strong emotional reaction to it.
Yeah.
But it is a complete thing. It makes sense. Mm-hmm. Does not particularly bother me. Sean says by contact. I love Farron Keep. Stepping into it after finding Cathedral of the Deep was a nice change of scenery from a functioning building into one that's almost entirely a natural environment. The callback to the Valley of Defilement, that is, having a clear path ahead, was really welcome for me. I like these levels most when I feel like I can avoid the poison swamp by staying on the right path. And of course, a ton of fun to hunt around for all the other goodies hidden in the area. The Abyss Watchers boss fight is the first great boss fight in Dark Souls 3. I love the first half of it when you can get a breather by pitting the Watchers against one another, just like in the cutscene. And the second half, with its obvious callback to Artorias, functions as a lovely duel. I had the experience of beating them on the first try, barely walking away with a scrap of health and no Estus left.
Yeah.
Yeah, first great boss fight in the game. I would say that's true.
Yeah, I mean, in a game that we've remarked on this, has some really good varied boss fights up to this point. Right?
Yeah, they're all good.
Yeah, this is something that does something new. Doesn't just do a variation like the Deacons does.
The Royal Rat Samority.
Yeah.
Tired.
It's fine. It's fine, man. I laughed.
Okay, thank you.
Take your laugh points. It's good. Yeah. Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
it's it is a really good boss fight, and man, I'm happy that I was able to be effusively positive before the next boss fight, which is a cemetery fire. Like it
I like
is.
the next boss fight.
Oh, it's so bad, Gary. It's
Oh
so
no,
bad.
that's gonna be fun. Rumble in the jungle.
Oh no,
I
poor
like it a
Bob.
lot. Yeah, I don't know what Bob thinks, but I like it a lot. And more than just presentation, like I actually kind of like it as a fight. But it took me a little while to get to it. So it's
A
I
little
bet you I
while
understand
to
your
like master it, or like to actually get to the boss.
no to like it
Okay, yeah.
to figure out why I liked it. So it'll be I'll understand where you're coming from. I bet.
Yeah, maybe fourth time's the charm.
But all the boss fights that everyone, I seem to like the boss fights in this game that everyone hates.
Okay, yeah.
Like because like my other favorite, when you eventually meet Aldrich, which isn't that much of a spoiler because we knew we were going to fight him. He's Lord of Cinder.
Mhm.
I love that fight, and a lot of people really hate it.
Yeah, I agree with you there. It's just
yeah.
I don't know, like I don't want to spoil it, but like yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have a good discussion
It's
about
got
it.
some
Like,
problems. It's not perfect, but it is also an execution of an idea that I haven't seen before, really.
yeah.
That so it is it's got some problems though.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not as good as this. Like this is a great boss fight. That one is one that I like.
Okay.
But do not love.
Yeah. We'll get there in a week as people listen to this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Arthur says via contact. After mucking through the swamp and lighting the Farron barbecues, I found some respite and took it easy to watch the Dark Wraith destroy the contingent of Grus outside the boss door. I walked in, unsure of what to expect, but promptly and easily dispatched the Abyss Watchers. As I was celebrating my victory, I walked out to get a drink and came back to find the newly unified Abyss Watcher dispatching me. Why? So yeah, I guess after he beat him, he left before the thing.
After he beat the first phase. This feels like so this feels I'm not laughing at your pain, but I kind of am. It feels like of a kind of like the people who set their controller down while they were standing in front of an NPC. And accidentally hit the trigger, aggroing them.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good story, Arthur. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How fucked up is it that they call them Grus? That's totally a thing.
It's Zork. And you are going to be eaten by a Gru. I still don't really get the Grus. And when we run into them later and learn a little bit more about Grus, because there are other kinds of Grus that don't appear here, that just appear in that later area, which suggests that that's the origin for them, but that makes no sense.
None at all.
I don't really know what's going on with them Grus.
Yeah.
But yeah, oh well. I mean, hopefully someone will put that together and let us know. If you have Gru theories when we get to that area, let us know.
Yeah.
Hot Gru takes. God, I'm not looking forward to that episode.
Yeah, it's gonna be
So like, what do you even talk about? Like,
it's gonna be a short app.
Yeah, that's 100% true.
Yeah. Randy writes in via contact saying, "Gotta say, as keeps go, Farron ain't the tops."
Yeah, baby.
Gotta say, as keeps go, Farron ain't the tops. Gonna have a rumble. You've got slugs, which are gross. You've got the Gru, who look like they fell out of an ill-fated Henson production, and you've got their big elephant cousins, the Blood Hymn Chantulons.
Yes, Yulan supremacy.
The suffix for life, who build flying blood skulls. Man, this guy knows how to weave a phrase. But throw in a few basilisks, a crab grand or two, cover the whole thing with poison, and you've got yourselves a Farron hole. After a much-needed rest at the lofty Sleepy Dog's Inn, we find ourselves off to a boss fight that I really enjoyed. Having the Abyss Watchers begin by fighting one another added this strange voyeuristic sense to the fight, making you feel like you're intruding on the critical moments of important works being done, all of those being capitalized, which is true, given the situation. You're bearing witness to and participating in the destruction of one of the last bulwarks holding back the Abyss, or so we're told. Regardless, what I truly loved about this fight was how much the second half recalled Bloodborne's Maria. From the one-on-one duel aspect, to the bloodfire charged attacks, to the rectangular arena, to the moral ambiguity of the boss itself, it was just a pleasant reminder of how goddamn good that DLC was, and was one of the few times that in Dark Souls 3 that I longed for a bonfire aesthetic. I always long for a bonfire aesthetic, Randy. You can just
Yeah,
say
it's
that.
one of my favorite.
You don't
Yeah,
have to like spare that. Like just say it.
yeah, that's one of the more regrettable omissions.
Yeah.
From this. Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that.
No.
The one thing about the slugs is I was happy to see them back, but I wish that there was a thing where they had like a clutch like they do in Demon Souls, like when you get the Moonlight Greatsword, and they're all like clustered around it. I kept seeing things hanging in the distance, and I was hoping there would be slugs hanging.
Oh,
like
yeah,
those nests.
they would be like just when you say a clutch, like them like in a globulon, like
Yes.
just hanging from a rope. Yeah.
Yes.
Gary, I forgot that there were slugs in 5.2.
Oh yeah, yeah, they're one of the coolest parts, man. You get that Moonlight Greatsword; it's one of the coolest set pieces in that game.
I know, right? But like I forgot
Yes.
about it. Like like this opened it up. Like during that entire episode, and I didn't even think to call it a callback.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, they're slugs are back, baby.
They're gonna
As
have
far
a
as slugs
rumble.
go, they ain't the tops.
They are the tops.
They are the tops. Well, the Demon Souls slugs are probably the tops.
Oh yeah.
These guys are secondary slugs.
Yeah.
Matt says via contact. By the time I fought my way to the Abyss Watchers, I was starting to notice that something about Dark Souls 3 bosses seemed a bit, well, off from normal. So many of my foes had buddies with them when I went to do battle with them. The Curse-Rotted Greatwood, the Crystal Sage, Deacons of the Deep, Abyss Watchers, and more all have backup/reserves to call upon in some form or another. Other Souls games have certainly done the same thing in the past, but they usually broke up the group fights with one-on-one skirmishes between them. This time around, they were all one after another. At least in my experience, the front loading of all the group melees messed with my sense of pacing a bit. I'm not averse to jumping into pell-mells, but it would be nice if they had given me some palate cleansers in between. This is admittedly a trifling complaint, but I'm curious if you all noticed that or were put off by the variety in the boss order.
Maybe put off by the lack of variety. Sorry,
Lack of variety.
I didn't edit
That's
that
right.
well. Yep.
Put off by the lack of variety.
Yeah. So, I think that I don't mind it, right? Like, there is probably like a duel or like a straight up like big monster fight you could put in here that would like technically break up the pacing or like the monotony of it. But I feel like they all use, more or less, they all use the extra cronies in kind of like different ways. So it depends on like on a macro sense, like, yeah, it is a whole bunch of like crony boss fights in a row. But on a micro sense, it feels like they play different roles in it. And so it didn't feel like the same note. It felt like the same instrument.
Yeah, I think that it would be better if there was one without it, or alternatively,
Vort.
like, I don't think we had Vort. I don't think the Curse-Rotted Greatwood needs its ads.
Yeah.
I don't think that adds very much to the fight.
Yeah.
I would have just struck those.
I don't think that adds. I think that's a weak boss fight in general. Like, it's fun theming wise, but
yeah, it's not particularly good, and it's not made better by the fact that you just have, like, while you're doing the first phase, you have this other thing to worry about.
Yeah.
You get the visual of all the creatures worshiping the tree, which is kind of cool, but other than that, it doesn't do much. I think it'd be cool I think it would be better paced with more breaking it up, but it didn't bother me that much.
Yeah. It didn't feel like a critical flaw.
Yeah,
which isn't me like discounting your either of your like complaints about it. Like I again, what I said there about it being not feeling monotonous because of the different ways they were used.
Yeah, for the most part, I agree with you. Even though I do think that the ones in Curse-Rotted are kind of stupid.
Yeah.
David says via contact. At the beginning of the game, Hawkwood laments how unkindled are lesser beings to the lords and how us trying to rein them in is a fool's errand. Here, for the first time, we learn what makes him think this. When the player pops an ember, they become more durable and become able to cross between realities. When a Lord of Cinder pops an ember, they're able to harness the power of the first flame and torch your ass. Previous Lord Souls bosses have been impressive and powerful creatures, but the lords in Dark Souls 3 show exactly how becoming a lord has made them more than what they once were, and that is awesome.
I didn't draw that connection.
Is he saying that when he's popping a cinder when the Abyss Watchers become the second phase of the fight?
I think so.
Does that happen?
No, like I included this because I want to watch for it in the future and see, because like everything has a second phase now.
Yeah.
I mean,
a lot of things do. It's kind of an interesting idea.
Yeah, and like the the second phase of this, for all the blood that is involved and the blood of the wolf kind of going into different bodies and things, like there's still a heavy fire component to it. Like I want to watch for it. Like I can't, off the top of my head call it up, but like it feels, I don't know.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. The idea that happens, and then let me see. I'm watching it now, so all the souls he doesn't pop a cinder. All the souls from his corpses explicitly flow into him.
Right.
Like it's explicitly a different thing than that, which we should have talked about in the episode. I had honestly kind of forgot about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then his sword gets fiery, which, you know what though? Yeah, he kindles.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the same kind of thing in his clothing and stuff.
Yeah.
So he does kind of explicitly kindle.
So I want to pay.
How did I miss that?
I want to pay attention to it. Like I think that David's onto something.
Yeah, that's kind of a neat idea.
Yeah. I mean, like I just like I don't give Hawkwood that much credit to know that like, oh, you do this and it's one thing, but they do it and it's like way another.
Yeah,
like,
no,
yeah, but
I didn't draw that connection to it, but it's not consistent because Yorm doesn't have a second phase or
never gets
anything.
a chance.
Yeah, well, and Yorm feels tacked on his shit in every possible way, but like Yorm doesn't get a chance to do that. Like a lot of the lords don't.
Right.
But explicitly, a couple enemies do, and this one does. So that's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
I didn't get to it the same way, but that is a cool thing. It's a different mechanic. Like he doesn't pop a thing; he just gets those souls that flow into him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, kind of cool.
Yeah.
Good observation.
Mm-hmm. Paul writes, the Abyss Watchers are one of the few callbacks of Dark Souls 3 that really worked for me, because it felt earned and plausible within the game world. Artorias was already established as a hero within the fiction before he became a hero for the fanbase. As such, it makes a lot of sense for there to be this cult dedicated to upholding his, or technically, the Chosen Undead's work. The fight itself is a passable duel with some wrinkles, but in presentation, I think it ties with a notable later boss for the Dark Souls 3 Dignity and Pathos Award. The immediate hook to me was the music, probably my favorite track on the soundtrack and eminently whistleable. Once the music had signaled to me that this was a scene of importance, I took the time to think about the area. We see the Gru, the local race employed as servants of the Undead Legion, visibly guarding their masters from the active Darkstalker agents of the Abyss. But the Gru visibly recall the Ulasil residents, suggesting that the Abyss has already begun to creep into them. And based on the sound of metal on metal from beyond the doors, you get the sense that it's too late for the Watchers as well. You open them, and your suspicions are confirmed. The Legion are both burnt and abyss-touched beyond salvation, hacking each other into pieces without rest for God knows how long. I haven't gotten a sense if the community is as into the Abyss Watchers as I am. As I said, a lot of gravitas was inspired by the music, and that's a very subjective thing. Curious to hear how you guys place them into the ranks of Dark Souls 3 callbacks. I think we're in agreement, Paul, and I think that if the other listeners who wrote in, or the ones we chose anyway, are to be believed, like the community is pretty positive.
Yeah, these guys are good.
Yep.
You know, this is a cool idea.
It is okay for you to like them. We decree.
Yes.
So
of course you could like them however you like, but they are good. I proclaim them good. Yeah, and finally, Jacob says, a little just funnin', listening to you guys talk about the Drangs that found in the cathedral, I was struck by the phrasing of the item description. The Drang Knights, proclaimed descendants of the land known for the legend of the linking of the fire. Obviously, Dranglink was not the land in which the fire was first linked, but something that I thought was interesting about Dark Souls 3 is just how pervasive the knowledge of the cycles and the fading flame is. In Dark Souls 2, it was a powerful knowledge found by Vendrick and Aldia through great sacrifice and hardship. In Dark Souls 3, however, everyone seems to have this knowledge right from the start. It occurred to me that this maybe is an effect of the bearer of the curse gaining the ancient crowns and seeking the light, dark, and what lies beyond. By being immune to the effects of hollowing and having intimate knowledge of the cycles, the bearer of the curse is in a unique position to pass this knowledge on and possibly set up systems to subvert the cycles. I don't have a strong idea of how they went about this, whether they're in some way responsible for the Fire Keepers bound to Firelink Shrine, leading the Unkindled to gather lords, or perhaps that system was in response to the knowledge just being out there. Either way, I like that it lends some meaning to the events of Scholar of the First Sin and Aldia's involvement. I'd be really interested to know what you guys think. Love the show. I can't wait for the rest of the season. Thank you, Jacob.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's a neat idea. It is true that everyone's talking cycles.
Yep, they are.
In this.
And it's true that, and I'll speak for you, Gary. Let me know if I'm speaking out of turn. We both believe that Krusty is going to get here, and we're going to be vindicated by thinking that the third ending, the Scholar ending, is the canonical one.
Yeah, for sure. That is I do want Krusty to get here, the Krusty Scholar. I like that idea of when you say everyone's just kind of talking about cycles, because when you think about Dark Souls 2, like the first person who talks about cycles at all is you talk to the sorcerer whose name I can't recall right now.
Nevlon?
No, not Navlon. The guy who is in the Bastille, who's turned to stone.
Oh, yeah. Stony make Lord Soul. Yeah.
Yes. And he's like, this actually wasn't always Drang Lake. Like, this has been many kingdoms have built here. And he's the first person who kind of like brings that up as like an idea. It doesn't feel like common knowledge at all. Whereas here, it's like, it's so weird that they have this system in place. That is a cool idea. That's a cool observation.
Yeah.
I hope Krusty gets here and canonizes that, because that would make a sense.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, I just I like the idea that somebody like breaking out of it, but like the cycle still goes on. They just have like anybody
how to
like
deal with it.
Yeah, like as we're seeing, like it is like subtle, like incremental changes as it still happens. Like like just like if somebody like had the ability to alter the tide by millimeters every day.
Yeah, the chosen undead is really progressive, but he's got a really regressive Congress and Senate, so he can't affect real change. So. Thanks everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks for your responses. You came out in force, and that's fantastic.
We love it.
If you have anything to say about the Catacombs of Karthus, aka Wacky Skeleton Land, hit us up at duckfeed.tv/contact.
Remember what we prefer. You have a better chance of getting your stuff on here if it is concise, novel, and readable.
Yes. Those are the three pillars.
Yep. And if you want to help out the show in a direct fashion, go to patreon.com/duckfeed.tv. A couple bucks a month gets you some cool stuff like access to our Slack channel, and also helps us do great things like we were doing with the Duckfeed.tv network of podcasts, including like Watch Out for Fireballs and Abject Suffering and all of those things that, we just love doing them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we enjoy doing it for sure. So, please, if you support us, continue to. If you don't, consider it. We really appreciate it. We've been recording for a while. I think it's probably about good.
I think so as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you guys very much. There may be some brief deleted scenes you'll only know after the music sting. You know more than we do. And until next time, Umbasa.
Umbasa.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon.
That's the one thing about shitty weather in Portland, where it gets hot, but it doesn't get hot with the frequency to prepare for it. So there's no air conditioner. It's the same thing when it snows. Like it snows once every 2 years, so there are no plows and everyone acts really surprised and starts crashing to each other. All the furniture sections of department stores become these kind of like, refuges where people are just kind of like hiding out, waiting.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's how movie theaters get here. Like movies do really well in the summer just because it's like, oh, there's really good AC in movie theaters. So
yeah, I've definitely seen some movies before just because it is a dark place to sit. The sadness of just like, oh, and the lights will be off in here.
Yeah, by the time I get out of here, the heat will have died down. By which I mean the cops, which are after me.
Yeah. Really do. We're gonna do our admin stuff. We usually let people kind of off the hook when we do our admin. The area I was saying I hated was Demon Ruins, in case you were curious.
Sure. Yep. Sure.
That area.
Okay. That's
fair. But yeah, thank you again.
Yeah.
Really do appreciate it.
I don't know what the future of do you know what the future of the cast looks like at this point, or?
We have tentative plans. It like all of it depends on like what happens at TGS, or like what these next three projects from are. But we have a sunset plan if this is literally it. But
yeah. Okay. Well, let me just pitch you the thing. I'm going to pitch you on my Dream Souls game. Not that is a thing you can bring into effect, but I'm just saying. Here's what
I think you have more connections than us.
Yeah, that's probably true. But I need you to conduct your dark magics.
Okay.
All I want is, this is the thing, right? It's Armored Souls, but I'll tell you the twist on the mecha meets
I've heard this
Dark
on Twitter.
Souls
This is really good. Yeah.
So you're a pilot who has a mech, and like there is a map at the mech scale, and you're moving around that world at the mech scale, and then you get to dungeons that are only human sized, and so you have your mech which has its own gear, and that gear progresses separately from your local gear. And then of course Steve Gaynor of Fulbright's suggestion was that the body is totally replaceable, that like it's this amazing transhumanist thing that like when you die you don't get that body back,
right?
And so that resets.
You do like a zombie U kind of thing with it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, I just want that game. Just give me. But I really just want to see them work in two different scales. Like that's the thing I actually would really love for them to do.
Cool.
What you're describing is like a weird version of like if From picked up the Blaster Master license.
That's exactly it. Blaster Master is 100% the influence that I want. It's exactly it. Because like, could you imagine like walking through these giant Grand Canyon-esque things in your mech where it just feels like corridors, and then you get out of it and it's just this massive thing. Like,
oh man,
that'd be awesome.
That is the best argument for a sci-fi Souls game that I've heard actually.
So I saw the Surge at E3, which is from the team that did Lords of the Fallen,
right?
Which is a sci-fi Souls-like. They're not maybe doing it as well as I would like. It looked okay. I'm curious about it, but
was that something they showed publicly?
Yes. You can dig up footage of it. There's some neat stuff. There's like limb targeting and the upgrade system seem neat, but like, we'll see.